So I finally got around to releasing the audio of the Wade Paris discussion, recording, whatever you want to call it, yesterday. It took quite a while for me to actually put it out. And the reason for that is that when it was first released, I actually did get all the audio. I ran it through a few audio programs to tidy it up, added subtitles, because as you can tell, the audio is still not good even after editing. But then after many hours of working on it, I deleted the video. The reason for that being that at that point in time, there were things about it that made me question it. And I couldn't guarantee the authenticity of it. So I wasn't going to put it out there. I wasn't going to release a fake story, especially because many people were discussed within that story, and if it was fake, then there were some pretty serious allegations being made. People could have been hurt if it was fake. A few weeks ago, after having much of what was said in that audio verified thanks to the CBC article, I released it as a members only video. And then yesterday, it occurred to me that actually pretty much the bulk of the things that I had been questioning in that video had been confirmed from the documents. So that's when I decided to release it. So what's my point here? Basically, as content creators, we are responsible for making sure that the information that we are putting out is something that we've verified, something that is not going to lead people down a rabbit hole that is full of untruths and speculation. Now, anytime a case becomes quite well known in social media, once it gains that traction, you're almost guaranteed to have a bunch of kooks come out with information that they know that is exclusive information. And they're doing it to get their 5 minutes of fame, or maybe they are someone trying to steer a narrative for someone involved in the case. And as content creators, we have a choice. When I was covering the Phoebe Bishop case, I had someone email me several times pushing a narrative. Now, the first time I thought maybe this is possibly truthful, so I directed it straight to the Queensland Police. I didn't come out and report it on my channel because at that point in time I didn't know this person at all. I had no way of verifying the claims that they were making. So I wasn't about to stake my reputation, and I wasn't about to cause additional grief for the family of this 17-year-old girl, by putting out false information. I've had times when I've been covering cases and behind the scenes I've been in communication with family members who I know are not remotely involved, family members who could no way be considered a suspect because they are separated enough for me to know that they have no involvement. Even then, I respect their privacy, and I have never ever brought anyone onto my channel to gain clicks and views. So to say that I was disappointed over a content creator deciding to release an audio that was so very blatantly fake is a major understatement. So the argument put forward by this creator, and I know that she's a sub, she's probably going to unsub from me now, but I have to say I'm actually really upset by her choices here. Her argument is, so one of my subscribers asked this question in relation to something that is said later in the video, but it's about verifying information. And her question was, which channels, which sites can you or did you attempt to verify her claims? The response, her claims do not need verifying. She is recounting a sighting she believes to have been Lily. The point here is to get the description out there in the event anyone at all has had a similar experience. You mean basically get the video out there to see if there's anyone else who wants to contact you with fake sightings so that you can get even more views. Because I have no doubt that the decision to publish this video comes solely from the decision of wanting to gain clicks and views. There is no way that any logical person would not question the veracity of what this woman is saying. There is no way that a credible creator wouldn't stop and actually research the information that this woman is giving before deciding to run with it. And what about people like Belinda Gray? Now, apparently, and this horrifies me, this content creator is apparently going to put this person in contact with Belinda. In fact, she said in her comments section that she had contacted Belinda herself. You know, I couldn't give a damn about the emotional impact of something like this on Malaya, Daniel, Janie, or even Cindy, because I think they all know what's gone on here. But Belinda is an innocent victim in this. And you're publishing a video which, at first glance, could give someone false hope. Don't you think it's hard enough for Belinda to be going through this daily torture of not knowing what happened to these children, this daily torture of not knowing where they are? And yet you have YouTube creators who want to put out this false information that may well give false hope, or at the very least, just rub in the fact that these children are likely gone and that they don't know where they are. And let's say this was an abduction or a traffic kind of situation, and you just put this all out there for the whole world to hear. Did you not consider that if this was a genuine situation, that you could be putting that child at risk? You could be guaranteed that if it was real, that the description of the vehicle would no longer hold. But you could have also completely ballsed up an investigation. Because if hypothetically this was a genuine sighting and we hadn't heard anything from the RCMP, that would have been because they were trying to protect the investigation and trying to actually locate the individual. Like I said, you can tell from the way this woman is talking that it's complete utter BS. But it's got to come down to protecting the investigation. It's not our place as content creators to decide what tips should be made public and what tips shouldn't be. And it's certainly not our place to connect a tipster with a family member of the missing children. You know how many times law enforcement connect tipsters with family members of missing children? 0. It has never happened, and it will never happen, because it is not ethical. You have no idea who this kook is, and yet you're going to put them in contact with someone who is going through a hellish experience and doesn't need the additional stress or the additional pain of someone making these false claims. Yes, there is value in people with social media accounts doing interviews with family members of missing people. It raises awareness. But there is a line that should not be crossed. And to me, the release of this audio is definitely crossing a line. It took me less than 5 minutes to verify that this caller was completely and utterly a fake. But I guess when you figure that you've got a scoop and you're already counting the views before you publish, then you're not going to be interested in checking if the caller is in fact a complete utter fake. Now, because I know that there will be Daniel sympathisers watching this video, and there will also most likely be members of the Martel family watching this video, who will turn around and argue that black is white when I point out the most obvious signs that this is a complete utter fake, I am going to go through the audio and take you through it step by step to show you why it is so undoubtedly a complete utter fake.
Why I share this is, while it's important for police to issue missing person reports, it's my belief that it is equally important to promote and publicize those people who firmly believe that they have seen a missing person, a person that's been reported as missing. It's so important to promote these sightings because there may be that 1% or that 0.5% chance that the person who says they saw a missing person in fact did see that person. So we share this with just that information for you.
Translation, it is open season for any kook who wants to ring up and claim that they've sighted these missing children, because they will get an audience regardless of whether or not they are being truthful. This is not an ethical way to approach coverage of a case. It encourages all the nutcases to come out of the woodwork, and like I said, it could potentially jeopardise the case, and it could cause serious emotional distress for those people who actually are living this reality.
And to put it out there so that if anybody else witnesses this man and this little girl, or also witnessed this, it may serve the police in their investigation.
I just had to share this because this is actually making a very, very valid point through humour. I'm from Saskatchewan too, and I saw Lily just yesterday. So I called the RCMP and they said they know where Lily is because Durwood found out and he told them, so no worries. Once you introduce an open policy of accepting all these tips regardless of whether or not there's any veracity to them, then you are opening up a whole can of worms.
Or not.
Yes, we seen her. Like, I actually conversed with her. So I live in a small area in Regina, and I was following the story for a while. We live in a small community where we're very close knit. Like, everybody knows each other. All the kids, they all go to either the Catholic or the public school.
Yes, there is some similarity between her voice and Logan's, but pitch-wise, she has a slightly lower voice. Also, in terms of word usage, there are some common words that her and Logan use different words for. As for speech patterns, I have to say this woman does sound like she is a Mackenzie. Even down to the grammatical usage, where You get wrong words used, so seen them, which is something that we've heard from Daniel's family, but also the intonation of the words that she uses. There were actually a number of words that she uses that are similar to or are the same as words used by Logan. And when you listen to them side by side, the intonation is the same, which is suggestive not just of people being from the same area, but of people actually spending time together and adapting speech patterns based on who they're speaking to quite regularly. The other really significant thing here is her repeated use of the word conversed, because that is a word that is used in written language. It is not something that is used in common everyday speech, which to me suggests that this is from a written narrative. This is something that has been written out in terms of this is what I'm going to say, and hence we get the use of the word conversed. You're not going to have a person who is, on one hand, using the word seen inappropriately, which suggests someone from a lower educational level, someone from a lower socio-economic background, and then they turn around and use the word conversed. It just doesn't work that way. Which suggests to me also that someone else may have written the script for this. So I think the thing to pay attention to throughout this is those times when she's essentially forced to go off script. When she's been asked a question by the interviewer that is not something that had been worked out beforehand.
And I took my boys there. I have 3 kids, 3 little boys. And there was this guy that was there, and he was very, like, strange looking. Like, have you ever seen that movie Men in Black?
Yeah.
And you know the one guy, like, that has, like, the alien in his brain or whatever? Like, he was very big. Like, he had red hair. I can describe him to a T. And he had, like, this little kid with him, and I'm looking around and I'm talking to the other parents, and we were kind of making a joke about it because I was like, who's like creep is this? Like, why is this guy like watching this kid, like stalking this kid?
So let me get this straight. You're there with other mums, all of whom presumably have young children with them, and you're having a conversation with other mums about this guy that you believe is a creeper and shouldn't be there, and nobody does anything? Maybe if you were the only parent in the park and you got bad vibes and you didn't have anyone to use as a sounding board, then maybe you might do nothing. But you're telling me that other parents, as in multiple parents, who were there with young kids, all apparently had a lobotomy earlier in the week, so that none of them felt that there was any threat to their own children or the other children at the park from this guy that you're describing as a creeper.
And this little kid came running over because my child is 6 years old.
There is so much wrong with that one statement. First of all, over-explaining. You're in a playground. This little child that you claim might be Lily isn't going to know the age of your child for starters. They're not going to go, hey, look, that little boy is 6 like me. It sounds contrived by saying, she ran over to play with my child because he's 6. Like, well, he's exactly the same age, so that's the person she chose to play with in the entire playground. So, take a busload of 6-year-olds, particularly 6-year-olds who have grown up in a rural area, meaning that they're probably not overly accustomed to playgrounds other than the playgrounds in their school. They're probably not familiar with playgrounds in other parks, and playgrounds in each park are going to be different. So let's take a busload of lilies, a busload of 6-year-olds who aren't accustomed to playing in different parks, and let them out of the bus. They're not going to go, there's another 6-year-old over there, I'm going to go play with him. Those kids are going to go straight for the thing that interests them the most, regardless of even whether their friends are going to that same plaything. You will suddenly see these 6-year-olds mixing with other children that they may not normally mix with outside of their friendship groups, because their attention has been drawn to the particular piece of play equipment that has got an appeal for them. Let's say they run over to the slide and there's an 8-year-old lined up to go on the slide. They're not going to care. They want to go on that slide regardless. They're not going to say, oh no, there's an 8-year-old there, I better go and play over there with the 6-year-olds. We've heard that Lily and Jack liked to play with Daniel's children. Those children are older than them. I'm not sure about his son, but his daughter is like two years older than Lily. 2 or 3 years older. So, no, they're not going to get into the playground and decide, I'm going to play with that kid because he's 6. It doesn't matter that I want to go over there and play on that thing. I have to play with the 6-year-old because they're the same age as me. It concerns me that she's made a point of pointing out that her kid's 6 as well, so that's where, I'm going to say Lily, but we know it's not. That's where Lily ran to. It sounds like someone sharing the thought process that went into creating their narrative, as opposed to sharing actually what occurred. You know, the planning stage, okay, well, this child, I have to have them entering the playground, I have to have them connecting with my children somehow. Let's say that my child is also 6, bingo. But you're not going to say that if you're giving a simple retelling of something that happened, particularly when you consider what is said next.
Yeah. And he didn't really pay attention to her, but my 4-year-old like instantly took a huge liking to her.
So by turning around and saying that her 6-year-old didn't pay attention, but the 4-year-old instantly took a liking to her, what she has done is placed both those children in the same location and said, well, Lily ran over, and because my child is a 6-year-old, but she hasn't actually said here that Lily ran over to both these children. So she's basically had this 6-year-old sitting there on his own, we'll put him on the board on his own, fake Lily runs over to him, and then we drop the 4-year-old onto the board once Lily arrives there, because he wasn't there when she ran over. You know, her explanation was, she ran over because my child is 6 years old. That isolates that one child. She's not saying she ran over because my boys are similar in age to her, so she must have thought they'd be good to play with. No, she isolates the 6-year-old and then introduces the 4-year-old into the exact same location after fake Lily has joined the narrative.
And my boys were playing soccer with their dad, and I was with another mom, and she came over and she was on the swing and she's like, will you push me? And I said, absolutely, I'll push you.
Okay, so you have a sudden whopping great hole in the narrative there. Fake Lily has run over to play with her 6-year-old, but her 6-year-old didn't pay any attention to her, so she's playing with the 4-year-old. And then all of a sudden, those boys are all playing soccer with their father. It's not like they then decided to go do that. It's basically she's leapt from fake Lily playing with her 4-year-old to her boys are off playing soccer with their father and fake Lily wants her to push her on the swing. I mean, do these boys know how to teleport? Because if they do, then maybe she should be contacting the media and they could become famous. And, you know, where was her husband and her other boy when this initial interaction happened where fake Lily went over and started playing with her 4-year-old? Did they just suddenly teleport onto the soccer field when it was time to play soccer? And it's not just the gap in the narrative here. There's no transition. She's like, this is happening. Lily came over. My 4-year-old wanted to play with her. And my boys were playing soccer with my husband. There is no transition from playing to them playing soccer. So not only is there a gap in the narrative in terms of them actually deciding they want to go play soccer, but she makes it sound like the events are concurrent. Lily was she ran over to these two boys, was playing with the 4-year-old, but at the same time, clearly the 4-year-old was playing soccer with the father. And then fake Lily, runs over to the swing. We have no explanation of what fake Lily was doing when she was playing with the 4-year-old. We have no explanation of what fake Lily was doing in between when the 4-year-old stopped playing with her and when she ran over to the swing. It's like she just froze in spot while the boys ran out and started playing soccer, and then as soon as they were positioned, she unfroze and ran over to the swing. When there is no linearity in a narrative like this, that is a huge red flag.
And I looked at her, I said, "You're not from around here, are you?" Because like I said, my community, everybody knows each other. So when somebody's at the park and we don't recognize them, we're going to question like, where are you from? Blah, blah, blah.
So when you don't know someone, you're going to question where they're from, blah, blah, blah. Now, when I say blah, 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 I imply there that there's going to be multiple questions. That you're going to start up a conversation. But she has a very limited range of questions here. And she doesn't ask this child what their name is. Not only that, but she's engaging directly with this child that she doesn't know. And not once does she engage with the apparent guardian of the child. Who does that? If you are in a playground and a child is there with a person who you've identified as being essentially their guardian, then it's just going to be weird if you completely ignore their guardian and start up a conversation with the child. Are you some sort of predator? Not once throughout this whole narrative does she suggest that she ever tried to engage with the man.
Anyway, this kid jumped off the swing and turned so that her back was facing the person that was with her, because he didn't say a word. He was just staring, like a dead stare, like not letting this child out of his sight. But he didn't belong there. Like, it was just very strange.
Later in this interview, she identifies the fact that this park is actually really close to a major highway. So wouldn't you expect that just maybe these were people who were on a road trip and they decided to get out of the car for a while? I mean, we live in the modern age. People have GPS. So if you are going through a town and you decide you want to stop, then you're going to look on the GPS for a park where your child can play. Now, what you're going to notice is that as this interview progresses, she tries to add more persuasive details to try and push her story. So it will become more scary as it goes further through. You know, at this point she's insisting that he didn't belong there. But other than that he looked like a character out of Men in Black, all she's giving here is that he was staring. Well, I could tell you now, when my nieces and my nephew were 6, had I taken them to a park and another adult was paying a lot of attention to one of them, then heck yeah, I would have kept my eyes on them the whole time. And as for this story of the child jumping off the swing and facing the other direction so that she was facing away from this guy so he couldn't see that she was talking, you are hypothetically talking about a 6-year-old who is therefore not going to have the cognitive ability to actually think that actually this is what I need to do. A child that age just does not have that level of problem-solving skills. If they are genuinely afraid of speaking in front of this person, then they're just not going to speak. They're not going to turn around so they have their back to that person and speak.
So I was pushing her and she goes, "No, we're not from around here." And I said, "Well, sweetie, where are you from?" "Well, I know that we're not from around here. I live far away." I said, "Okay." I said, "Who are you here with?" "That guy over there." And she pointed to this dude. And I'm like, "That guy over there? Yeah, that's my uncle, but I don't know him very well." I said, "Oh, okay. So where's your mom?" "Oh, me and my mom live in a car." And I said, "What?" "Yes, we live in a car." And I'm like, "Well, that's kind of strange. It's a gray car and it has a broken windshield." Like, this kid is just like telling me their life story.
Okay, so you're asking this child closed questions. You're not from around here. At that age, the answer you're going to get from them is a yes or a no. Your average 6-year-old, when you give them a simple question, is going to give you a one-word answer. But don't forget, Lily, if this actually was Lily, then we've been told that both her and Jack were developmentally delayed. They were behind the other children in their class. So you're definitely only going to get one-word answers. That whole conversation that she is relaying here just sounds so utterly contrived. And if it was Lily, why would she claim that she lived in a grey car with her mother? Because last I checked, that was a full-on mobile home that they lived in.
I said, "Okay, so where is your mom right now?" "Oh, she's supposed to pick me up." And I said, "Well, when is she picking you up?" "I'm not sure, but I've gone to sleep and she still hasn't come to pick me up." And I said, "Oh, okay." Not really thinking anything of it. Like, I have 3 children of my own that I'm trying to like watch at the same time.
So apparently she forgot here that her children were playing soccer with her husband, and therefore she was not needing to watch them. She had chosen not to go with them when they were playing soccer, but was instead chatting with another mum, which shows you just how much attention she needed to pay to her own children. And she's using that as an excuse for not really noticing how odd that statement was. Now here's the thing, if this woman was legitimate, she has already claimed that this is an area where you get a lot of foster families. And she's saying that, oh, but we know every child in the area, we know every person in the area. And the story that she's given here is the sort of story that you may hear from a child who has just been removed from an unsafe home environment and is too young to really understand what's going on and believes that their mum is going to come and get them. I mean, you would automatically, if you lived in an area that has a high number of foster families and foster children, you would automatically look at the situation and think This guy is a staff member of like CPS because they haven't placed this child in a home yet. And he is taking this child out to play in the playground. Maybe there is a meeting with a parent at this point in time, and this is why he is watching the child carefully. Because maybe they need to make sure that a parent, a custodial or non-custodial parent, does not have access to this child. You would automatically think that if you apparently live in an area that is a high foster home area. How we interpret the world depends on our own personal experiences. And for her, living in a community with a high number of foster children, then the first thing that should come to mind is that this is a child who has just been removed from an unsafe environment.
Anyway, we go to leave, and this little girl throws herself off the swing, but not like, like by accident, like to purposely try to hurt herself as if to get attention. Like, oh, maybe if I do this.
Or maybe it was just a classic 6-year-old tantrum because the person who was pushing the swing for them had to leave. Now here's a bit of audio that I think at this point in time is somewhat relevant.
Lily, she was a Miss Prim girl, as I would say, if that's what you call it. I guess they call her a diva or whatever, but to me, Miss Prim. Because whenever she would get her clothes dirty, she would go in and change her clothes. I never knew what that girl was going to come out in.
So this person is trying to create a convincing narrative here. The thing is, they haven't thought about what we already know about Lily, and that is that Lily doesn't like to get her clothes dirty. Lily's not going to be the sort of child that's going to throw herself off a swing. And seriously, if you find yourself in this situation, aren't you going to take your cue from the apparent guardian of this child? You'll note too, again we have a hole in the narrative. She doesn't offer up what her response was to this child doing this. Did she just ignore it?
She was very scared. And it was funny because I was talking to my husband and I said, where do I know this kid from? Like, eyes don't lie.
No, I don't believe Daniel had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lily. Our heart don't lie.
Not the same words, but definitely the same sort of speech pattern. So she waits till the end of her description of the entire encounter to then introduce the idea that this girl was very scared. Now, if this child truly was very scared, then that would probably be, or it would almost certainly be, the first thing that you comment on when you are giving this whole narrative. It's not something that you tack on as an afterthought. The other red flag with this is that she's not describing the signs that allow her to decide that this child was very scared. When someone is providing a narrative but they're not providing any sensory experiences, then you've got to question what the heck is going on. Because when you are actually giving a proper recount, then you are going to explain the experience. You are going to explain the sensations that you were feeling or how you interpreted something. She was very scared. Well, how do you know she was very scared? Do you do mental telepathy? Your children know how to teleport and you do mental telepathy. There is no description here to tell us why she believed this child was very scared. Huge red flag. I would expect to hear something along the lines of, oh, she was trembling, or every time she looked at this guy, she hunched her shoulders, or she started to shake. But instead we have this very one-dimensional comment of she was very scared. Again, it's a narrative. We're not hearing a recount here.
I'm like, I know this kid from somewhere. Like, where do I know this kid? Anyway, we go to leave, and then all of a sudden I'm turning back and I'm calling for my 8-year-old, and I said, come on, we got to go right now. And this guy is dragging this kid by the arm.
Again, you've got a gap in the narrative. She's gone from basically pushing this child on the swing, then she's getting ready to leave with her children. This child throws herself off the swing, which means this child is on the ground. And then apparently in the space of time that it takes for her to turn around and call her 8-year-old to say, come on, we've got to go, suddenly this man is dragging this child by her arm. Was he standing directly next to the swing? Because that would then indicate that maybe this woman was ignoring him while she was actually pushing this child on the swing. Or have we just missed out a chunk of the narrative yet again and basically had a bit of a time leap?
You won't even believe what they were driving. He was driving one of those like disability like buses, kind of. So like a disability, like where they come and the ramp comes out on the side. You know what I mean? Like the guy's dressed, he's dressed in Carhartts. And it was so freaking strange to me. I come home and all of a sudden, like, I'm like, where do I know this? I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, hun. And he's like, what? And I said, you want to know who that kid was? And I pulled up the pictures of Lily and Jack and I said, look it. And instantly he's crying. Okay. And I'm crying because I'm freaking out because you can tell my eyes don't lie.
This is a bit like Justin crying because he was sad because Janie was sad. And Janie crying because she blamed herself. If you have this sudden realisation that this child that you were interacting with at the park is you believe to be a child that is missing, your first reaction is not going to be to burst into tears. And certainly, what reason would her husband have to suddenly burst into tears because he believes what she's saying? Because from her account, he hasn't paid any attention whatsoever to this child that she was pushing on the swing. He was busy playing soccer with their children. This is basically an attempt to add a persuasive detail that actually does not fit the narrative. And can we just acknowledge here that if you have spent enough time looking at images of this child to be able to recognise their eyes, then you are going to be able to recognise their other facial features. You would have to be pretty absorbed in this case to recognise the eyes, but not the facial features, and to actually not realise that you recognise the eyes until after you've gotten home. If it's the eyes that are the thing that you have recognised, you are going to realise immediately, the moment that you spot that child, who they are. It's not an afterthought. If you've followed my channel for a while, given that every video that I do on Jack and Lily, I have, for the entire video, I use images of Jack and Lily, then you probably can look at these sets of eyes and tell me which ones are Lily. If you've been round long enough, you may even be able to recognise which set of eyes are Madeline Soto. But if you weren't as heavily immersed in this case as we are, and you ran into Lily on the street, you would recognise her first by her facial features, not by her eyes. Now, going clockwise, you're starting from roughly 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, yeah, that's Lily. Then down to 3 o'clock, that's Maddie. Down to 5 o'clock, I'm wondering if any of you got that, That's Bindi Irwin when she was the same age as Lily. Then we have Lily again, and then up at the 10 o'clock, Madalena Kojikari. You might have heard of the Madalena Kojikari case, but I'm willing to bet that you wouldn't have recognised who that was just from looking at the eyes. So maybe the eyes don't lie, but if you are so familiar with this case that you are going to recognise the eyes, you are going to recognise them instantly. You are not going to remember them an hour later and say, heck, yeah, that's what it is.
Like, you can, very distinct eyes, the way the child was talking.
Now, I've not come across any videos of Lily talking. I've come across a video of Lily screaming at the top of her lungs, but I've not come across Lily talking. And yet apparently this woman is familiar with what Lily sounds like when she's talking. This to me actually sounds like leakage, like this is someone who knew Lily. And they've slipped up and basically in saying the things that would allow them to recognise Lily, they've forgotten the fact that actually publicly we've not heard Lily talk.
So I'm doing my own research, right? And I'm like, okay, well, I said, the car that this child was describing looks exactly like the car when they did the aerial view of the house, like to a T.
Yeah, because a grey car is so very specific. If you told me to meet you in the car park at your car and said, it's a grey car, I'd know exactly which car to go to. So this woman is now showing us just how closely she follows this case. She's talking about the aerial footage of the property. If you were just regular Joe citizen and you were following this case on the news, then you've probably only seen less than 10 seconds worth of footage of an aerial view of that property since the case broke. You're not going to make the connection between a random description of a grey car and the aerial footage that you saw. Not unless you've been following various YouTube channels and watching content regularly relating to these children, in which case you would have instantaneously recognised Lily, if you are familiar enough to know what her eyes look like. It's not something that is going to take you an hour or so to process.
I have screenshots that I saved onto my phone for it because I was conversing with the RCMP. I called the RCMP the next day. First, I talked to one of the detachments, but then I had the head of the RCMP in Nova Scotia call me. And he's like, okay, well, it says here that you did get in touch with the Regina Police. And I said, absolutely. And also the the RCMP detachment out there. And I said, yes. He's like, did anybody come to your house? I said, yes, an officer came here and took a statement. He's like, well, you know what? And I said, what's that? He's like, we can't seem to find that officer, and we cannot find any record of a police officer coming to your house. Which was, it was so, like, I was floored. Like, I was bawling. I said, well, does that make sense to you? And he's like, well, not really. We're trying to figure it out. I said, well, it does make sense to me is that these little kids are missing. There's no Amber Alert out for them, and you guys aren't seeming to be doing your job.
Okay, come on, get real. If anyone is going to ring you that's higher up the chain, it's going to be the lead investigator in the case, not the head of the RCMP. She's essentially being, or attempting to be overly persuasive here by basically going, oh, you have to believe me, what I'm saying here, because the most important person in the entire RCMP rang me. That's what makes it so very important. And they're telling you that they're having trouble tracking down the person that you spoke to and you burst into tears? Like, seriously, is there something wrong with this woman? You're not going to turn around and gaslight the RCMP and say you're not doing your job because you didn't put out an Amber Alert. You're going to address the issue of them saying, well, we're having trouble identifying the officer that contacted you. You're going to basically start giving them details of who that individual was. You're more likely to be trying to convince them that actually you are telling the truth and that someone did contact you, as opposed to trying to gaslight them and tell them they're not doing their job. And can we just acknowledge here the ridiculous amount of detail that she is going into here? This is someone worthy of Dingbat Getty's level of storytelling.
Okay, so I'm a mother of 4 boys in total. I had my little brother when he was in kindergarten. He was actually taken right out of our backyard and trafficked.
Okay, major leakage here. And she's tried to cover for it and just made herself look really dumb. So she slips out with, I'm the mother of 4, after telling us that she has 3 boys. And you hear that pause after she says 4. And then she comes out with this sentence, I had my brother in kindergarten and he was actually taken right out of our backyard and trafficked. Oh my gosh. Seriously. If this woman does not have connections with Dingbat Gettys, like, what a joke. She has basically tried to correct her mistake of saying that she has 4 boys instead of 3. Notice the way she says it though. I had my little brother when he was in kindergarten. So she's not saying that she has him now. She's claiming that she had him when he was in kindergarten. But the thing is, the way she's talking here, because she's tried to basically save her story, her brain is basically stepping in and saying, okay, I'm going to prevent you from lying here. And basically, the sentences aren't structurally correct. I had my little brother when he was in kindergarten. He was actually taken out of our backyard and trafficked for 3 months. That doesn't connect with her saying that she has 4 boys. And you could get really confused here and think, hang on, why is she bringing up her little brother here and talking about him being trafficked? Because she doesn't actually say explicitly, I had custody of my little brother, or my little brother lived with me when he was in kindergarten. It's a very, very vague sentence, and that is because she is trying to scrabble here to fix her mistake. But the other thing that gives her away is that she claims, I'm a mother of 4 boys. But then she still refers to her little brother as a little brother, meaning that she doesn't view him as being a son. She doesn't see herself as actually being his mother. So she's tried to fix it, but her words have given her away.
And we didn't find him for good 3.5 months. But when a child, like being a mom, that was that little girl, and it haunts me. I'm telling you, to this day, it haunts me. And then I was watching all the other videos about, like, them saying, oh, he doesn't have family in the West. He does. Well, you know what? Why would you even say that? Because that little girl, that was that little girl.
Well, this woman has watched more content than me, because I've got no effing idea who she's referring to when she says he doesn't have family out west. She's saying she's watched all these videos. So she's basically admitting here that she has extremely intimate knowledge of this case. In which case, why didn't she recognise Lily, if this was Lily at the park? It sounds to me like she's presenting the same narratives that we get from Daniel's side of the family and from Dingbat Geddes, which again makes me think that she is basically a complete utter fake with connections to the Mackenzie family.
The next day, we went back to the park to see if this child would come back with him. I'm standing there and I'm talking to this other mother, and she's like, "You want to know something strange?" I said, "What's that?" She's like, "That little kid that was here." And I said, "Right." And I didn't say anything. I didn't coerce her into saying anything. She looks at me. She's like, "That was that little girl that went missing." I said, "Right? Thank you, 100%.
Persuasion 101. Introduce an additional witness who can back up your story. Someone who we can't actually question because she's just a random person at the park. Now, here's something interesting for you. The first time that Belinda Gray was on It's a Crime and Shame, partway through that 5-hour live, Darren Geddes popped up. And he was talking about something. And Belinda jumped in and offered clarification because it was about something that occurred when she was actually there. And Dingbat's response was essentially to say, "Thank you for that, because that proves that I'm being truthful," or something like that. Essentially, what he was saying was, if someone else says it happened, then it happened. Even though, ironically, Belinda's story actually showed that his story was wrong. But what this woman is doing here is she's employing the strategy of the invisible witness. This random person, I'm not going to give you a name, but I'm just going to say that they came to this same conclusion themselves with no prompting from me. And yet, neither of them discussed it when they were together at the park with this child in front of them. Neither of them said, "Hang on, this kid is really, really familiar." In all honesty, this woman was just trying way, way, way too hard to be persuasive here.
So because my kids conversed with her, this is what I did. I woke up in the morning. I showed a picture of Lily to my 6-year-old. I said, "Do you know this kid?" And they're like, "No, not really." Then my little 4-year-old, because he actually was playing with her, I showed the picture and I said, "Do you know this little girl?" "That's my friend from the park, Mommy. That's my friend."
So, of 3 children, the 4-year-old is the one that apparently recognises her. And yet, apparently, she went over to the 6-year-old first. You have 3 children and only one allegedly recognises her. Now, I'm going to put a pin in that and come back to that. But I just want to point something out here at this juncture. So, she's saying that this child was playing with her children. And this child was specifically playing with her 4-year-old. Children have no inhibitions whatsoever. And if you take your child to the park and there's a new child there that they've not come across before, what is the first thing that child is going to do? They're going to ask, "What's your name?" You mean to tell me that this 4-year-old played with this 6-year-old, this fake Lily, and never asked her name? And yet he's referring to her as his friend? I call BS on that.
It was crazy. It was bizarre. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, that was the little girl. 100%, I know it was.
Do you remember, or did you make a note of you said the head of the Nova Scotia RCMP? I'm assuming it was major crimes. Do you remember who you spoke to?
No, but what I can do is I can actually go and I'll take a look at all of like I have all the callers, like I screenshotted everything. I'm on an iPhone and stuff, but like I said, it's from June, but I can get all that information out to you.
Now, you might have to help me out here because I thought my math skills were pretty good. However, she claimed at the beginning of the video that this all occurred 2 weeks after Jack and Lily went missing. And now she's saying this occurred in June. Jack and Lily went missing on the 2nd of May. I'm pretty certain that 2 weeks after the 2nd of May does not land us in June. And the other issue here is that basically what she's done, she's been asked, do you know who it was you spoke to? And she's like, oh, I can't remember. Like, I have all the callers. And then she pauses. It's like she slams on the brakes and suddenly realises that obviously if they call her, she'll have the numbers, but she's not going to have names. Because obviously she's not going to have them programmed into her phone because they're people that she doesn't know calling her. So she slams on the brakes, does a bit of a U-turn after a pause. You can tell. You can hear from the cadence of her speech. There's this, oh crap, moment when she suddenly realises what she's saying and that it actually doesn't fit her narrative. So then she tries saying, well, I screenshotted everything. Well, she said that this guy phoned her. So what exactly did she screenshot? Because it's not like you can screenshot a conversation, and when someone rings you that's not in your address book, their name's not going to come up. So, at best, all she can screenshot is a call history. And then you're going to have to do the research to try and find out if the phone numbers that's on her phone actually do correspond with someone from the RCMP, given that when you try and look up a listing of contacts for the RCMP, you only get the standard number. It could be difficult to verify. And I'm on an iPhone and stuff. What's the and stuff? She is basically panicking in this moment because she's screwed up. And she's tried to make a save by saying, I screenshotted it because I'm on an iPhone and stuff. I'm guessing this woman probably doesn't really understand iPhones because, you know what, they act just like an Android. They're not going to tell you the name of the person calling you unless you have that person in your phone book.
Okay. And it says right here, did the RCMP identify himself? Of course he did. And did you take a picture? No, I didn't, because I was at a park with 3 of my own children.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to, and their dad's useless. So, I mean.
Again, the narrative is falling apart. They've asked, did you take a photo? And she's like, no, because I was at the park with 3 of my own children. And you, again, hear her slam on the brakes. She suddenly realises that she's actually said to people that her boys were playing soccer with their father. And she tries to save the situation, but this is another one of those classic situations where the brain is basically stepping in and going, I'm not going to let you lie. She can't get out a full sentence after screwing up and claiming that she was basically having to supervise her own children, and then realising that actually she said they were with their father. She goes, sigh, and you get this pause. I'm trying to Another pause. And their dad's useless, just randomly out of the blue. Well, if he's so useless, why were you hanging out with another mother, focusing on this child, as opposed to focusing on him playing soccer with your children? He can't be that useless. And then we get, I mean, seriously, this woman, she messes up her narrative and then she's trying to save it and she's just digging herself a deeper hole.
I'm trying to talk to this kid, and they left quite quickly. It was like the guy knew, like, because I was trying to look at him figuring it out, and I'm pretty blunt. I'm like, whose creep does this belong to? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's there and he doesn't belong there.
So now she's saying, I'm trying to talk to this kid, and they left quite quickly. You weren't trying to talk to this kid. You were trying to round up your own kids to leave. So you're getting your narrative all twisted here. And then she once again tries to express this opinion that, there's something wrong with this guy. But she just reverts to saying exactly what she said at the beginning. Whose creep does this belong to? And he's there, but he doesn't belong there. Well, other than telling us that he looks like some dude out of Men in Black, she's not given us anything to indicate why she thinks he shouldn't be there. So he's watching closely while you are playing with this child who happens to be under his care. What's creepish about that? She's not indicating anything that, to me, would be a red flag. She's talking about what sounds like someone keeping an eye on a child that's under their care. And according to her, that makes him a creep and he doesn't belong there. Again, it's the over-explaining, but without giving any of the finer details. So this guy is a little bit hairy and he's a bit of a ginger. But she's not communicating exactly what it was that made her get these vibes. Not in specific terms. She's just repeating herself. You don't hear any description of a specific vibe, like he made my skin crawl, or he made me feel like I just wanted to grab my kids and run, or I felt like I was about to have a panic attack when he looked at me. None of that. We just have to figure that out for ourselves. We just have to take her word for it that, as far as she's concerned, he didn't belong there and he shouldn't be there. And that makes him someone's creeper. There's nothing in her description that allows me to really form any sort of impression of this guy. I could trip over him in the street tomorrow and I wouldn't have the faintest clue that this is the same guy that she's talking about.
And he doesn't look like he has children. It was very strange to me. And he was he was kind of scary looking. And
So what makes someone look like they have a child? I'm just curious. Because I reckon if I went down to the shops tomorrow and I looked at every guy that was working in whatever store was there, I couldn't tell you if he looks like someone who has a child. And we still have these really basic descriptions. He was tall and kind of scary looking. Was he scary because he was tall? Again, no sensory experiences here. He's just tall and scary. And looks like he doesn't have a child. But there's no explanation of that. She's basically throwing in whatever she can here to try and be persuasive, but it lacks depth.
As soon as that kid, like I replay our conversation over, I'm with my uncle, but I don't know him very well. And I'm just like, fuck, this is not making sense to me. This is not.
Again, repeating things. But this comment of, I'm with my uncle, but I don't know him very well. What kid's going to actually say that? If this uncle is someone that the kid doesn't know very well, they're going to explain it in terms that they themselves can comprehend. So they'd be more likely to say, I'm with my uncle, he's my mummy's brother. Not, I'm with my uncle and I don't know him very well. And not a little kid. Honestly, it really does sound so contrived.
And believe me when I say I think about it all the time because...
And believe me, it's my four-wheeler, and believe me, I don't let Daniel drive my four-wheeler, believe me.
And believe me, that's only two of multiple occasions when you hear Janie say, believe me. This woman uses several speech patterns that are similar or the same as Janie's.
I don't understand why it wasn't investigated further.
Translation, this is my explanation of why you're not going to hear anything about this from the RCMP. This is my explanation of why they didn't release an Amber Alert when I contacted them and told them that I had seen fake Lily. This is classic persuasive language. And it's coming directly after her appeal for you to believe her. Essentially, it's a case of, believe me, but you won't find evidence. So that brings us to roughly the halfway mark, and also the point where we start getting more questions from the host. So that is a good place for me to stop it and then come back tomorrow with a part 2. Now, I just want to make sure that people understand that while I have expressed my disappointment with this content creator, I do not condone anyone going to her channel and giving her a hard time over this video. I have simply shared my opinion, and that is not a reason for anyone to sort of jump on a bandwagon and start brigading. So, on that note, thank you for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button and also leave a comment below. And I will be back tomorrow with part 2 of this deep dive into this fake witness. So thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.